So, you want to try your hand at the shifting focus Wonder Woman team. You love the thrill of free action in cap. You love being able to pummel your enemies into the ground with a 4 damage quake. The ability to take 5 actions in a turn just drives you wild. Well, lucky for you, you came to the right place. Today we are talking about the ins and outs of the Lasso Phobia team on this episode of Mastering the Meta. Before we get started, be sure on every episode of Mastering the Meta, you check the icon on the, up here, somewhere, up here on the top left of your screen. This icon will let you know when this video was made, and you can use your own judgment if you think the info in this video is still relevant. We will try our best to release update videos as more sets release. Enjoy the rest of the video. While there are variations in every meta team, every team has a core. The core consists of pieces that give the team an identity. Pieces you build around and add support pieces or additional attackers. The core could be a majority of your team's points, or it could just be a third of it. And in the instance of the Lasso Phobia team, its core consists of 5 units, consisting of 240 points, or if you're daring, 190 points. Let's start off with the whole reason you're playing this team. Shifting Focus Wonder Woman. You will have all 3 Shifting Focus Wonder Woman on hand between your main force and the sideline. And if you're playing this team, you will heavily utilize 3 of the 4 Wonder Woman equipment. The Lasso of Truth, the Golden Armor, and the Wonder Woman bracelets. You can bring the Sword of Athena along if you want, since the equipment comes from outside the game, so you don't even have to put it on your build sheet, but you're probably not really going to use it. But before we get ahead of ourselves, though, let's talk about the shifting focus mechanic and its unique interaction with the Wonder Woman equipment itself. Can you believe it's been 5 years since the shifting focus mechanic was introduced into HeroClix in the world's finest set? Even 5 years later, the shifting focus mechanic really hasn't changed. We've gotten all different figures from Superman to Batman to Iron Man to Elektra to Black Widow, and now we have Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman, while she inherently works the same, she does have a few caveats that are a little bit different. Her shifting focus power reads free. If Wonder Woman began your turn on the map, replace her with another character with this trait, worded very similarly to every other shifting focus. But she also has the added effect. When Wonder Woman uses shifting focus Wonder Woman, while equipped with a Wonder Woman equipment, remove that object from the game and don't score it, instead of unequipping it. What this means is that when, typically with shifting focus, if they are equipped, they will immediately unequip the object when they switch between different figures. Certain items, that means it'll just drop. Other items or equipment means it KOs. In the case of the Wonder Woman equipment, it does neither. It doesn't drop up to the ground and it doesn't KO. It just, you remove the object from the game. No points scored. And that's what is one of the main pieces to make this whole mechanic work. The other half of the mechanic is the objects themselves. For example, on the Sword of Athena, it lists at the end of the effect, free. If the equipped character is named Wonder Woman, remove this object from the game and don't score it. If you do, equip that Wonder Woman with any other Wonder Woman equipment from outside the game. What this means is that I can shifting focus to a Wonder Woman, allow her to use an object, and then I could shift, essentially free action, switch to another Wonder Woman equipment before I end my turn. The last piece of this 3-piece is essentially the other trait that all shifting focus Wonder Woman have, and that's Wonder Woman may start the game with any Wonder Woman equipment equipped. What that means is when they start the game. So when you shifting focus, that is them starting the game, and that means they get to begin that game with an equipment. So the chain of events goes, I start with the Wonder Woman with Lasso of Truth. I utilize the Lasso of Truth and say, I am going to shifting focus. I shifting focus to another Wonder Woman, and instead of just dropping the Lasso of Truth, that Lasso of Truth is removed from the game. I then bring in another Wonder Woman. She can begin the game with any of the Wonder Woman equipment. So I start her with the Lasso of Truth again. Well, not again. This is a new figure, so she never began the game with the Lasso of Truth. She now is able to use the Lasso of Truth ability again, even though it's her first time using it. And then she can activate the second half, or I'm sorry, the equipment part, where you can free action remove the Lasso of Truth and give her the Wonder Woman bracelets. So essentially, I start with the Wonder Woman, Lasso of Truth, shifting focus, Lasso of Truth again, and then I could choose the Golden Armor or the Wonder Woman bracelets to give her some protection. That's really what this whole team is built around, is that fun interaction of switching back and forth. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the individual Wonder Woman pieces themselves. While we will talk about how the first turn or second turn works with this team in our Opening Salvo section, I will say that typically I begin the game with the 001 Common Wonder Woman. The reason being is because I want to end my turn shifting focus to either the rare 041 Wonder Woman or the 062 Wonder Woman, depending on how the matchup goes. You would utilize the 041 Wonder Woman if you want your retail to have a better chance of hitting, as the rare Wonder Woman has the damage power, unique modifier, opposing characters within range, modified defense -1 for each action they have, and assuming you hit, your lasso hits, they should have 2 action tokens on almost everybody. So that's an immediate -2 to all the defense. So you'll want to switch to her. You don't want to start with her. The other reason we start with 001 Wonder Woman is she has the highest movement. You'll want to get Wonder Woman from your starting area to the other starting area, and we'll talk about how in the later sections. But the 041 Wonder Woman has only 9 movement, whereas 001 Wonder Woman has 10, and even 062 has 10. But you might want to go to 062 Wonder Woman in the event you want to give Giganta a little bit more protection because of the 19 defend. So I find myself personally putting 001 Wonder Woman on my build sheet as my main force and putting the other 2 as sideline. So why don't we start talking about the second most important figure in this set. So in this core set of figures, we started with the shifting focus Wonder Woman, and obviously the next important figure is Prime Giganta. Now, Prime Giganta is where you can have a difference between the 2-point costs that I talked about before, either 240 or 240 or 190, I believe is the difference. It's a 50-point difference. Basically, you could play Giganta at 75 points or play her at 25 points. If you want to hit for 4 damage Quake, then you're going to want to go for the 75-point Giganta. You could play Giganta at 25 points and hit for 3 damage instead, but she only has 2 clicks at that point. And she could be easily outwitted. It's a little riskier. I typically, on my teams, play 75-point Giganta, but there's nothing to say you can't play 25-point Giganta. The reason Giganta is so important is because of her giant retaliation trait. Power action. Choose an opposing character that attacked a friendly character, or, this is the big part, that was attacked by a friendly character named Wonder Woman since your last turn. Place Giganta such that she can make a close attack targeting the chosen character, then do so. And she has Quake in her attack power on both clicks. The attacked by a friendly character named Wonder Woman is what makes this whole team work. The team basically gets Wonder Woman from one side of the map to the other, free action in cap. Even if you don't put out tokens or anything, you attack somebody. Now Giganta can come over, power action, retail, and attack. You don't have to be attacked. You don't have to mess with mystic shenanigans or anything like that. It's just simply Wonder Woman attacks somebody, Giganta comes over and attacks as well. Simple as that. Once again, the key things about Giganta that makes her great outside of the retail, she comes over with Outwit, which you can't use for the attack because you're in the middle of the retail, but it's good for after. She has Team Player, so you can copy, I believe I typically copy, well, she already has the Wonder Woman team ability, so you have a lot of options on what you can copy. Let's just say that. She also has Sidestep if you play her at 25. She has Charge if you play her at 75. Because of that quake and her being giant, you'll be able to attack pretty much everybody next to the person you're attacking. And her ability Quake also has, when Giganta uses it targeting 2+, so 2 or more, characters, she deals her printed damage value to each hit character, and after resolution, she gives each hit character an action token, which is amazing. She's pretty, well, I'll say she's relatively hard to kill. Her defensive power, invulnerability, but she also has, Giganta takes a maximum of 1 damage from characters with tiny, standard, or colossal symbol. So if they're giants, they just deal her normal damage. Everyone else, she only takes maximum 1 damage. Well, that sounds amazing, but why would I say that she's only kind of She can be outwitted. Simple enough. That's the easiest way to take her out, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the later section of pros and cons, what works and how to counter this team. The other reason Giganta works is because she can basically gain any keyword that Wonder Woman has. So that's why she's able to be on the Justice League team, which is a Justice League team, if you didn't know that. It should say over here somewhere. That's why she works. She is your heavy hitter. She is your main method of damage. So you're going to want to try to keep her alive. But she's what's going to be hitting in that opening salvo, turn 2. That's really going to surprise people. So let's talk about the third most important piece on this team. Alright, so the next most important piece or pieces is the 2 super rare flashes from Wonder Woman 80. They are the number 53 super rare flashes. Everyone probably knows what they do, but let's break it down a little bit for those that are a little bit confused. So you can, during force construction, you can add a flash at 30 points. That's how you start. You can put a 30-point flash. He starts on his first click, which gives him the charge, and then once per turn when Flash uses it, after resolutions, he can use charges free. So basically a double charge. He also has leadership. He also has super senses. He has team player, which is great because you got Wonder Woman pieces to make that super senses an even harder hit. And then he's got in cap, which you probably won't ever be using, because you're already going to be doing a lot of in-cap. He has police team ability as well, which helps in certain instances, but not a ton. But what's cool is that's a really tight package for 30 points. Only 2 clicks, but still he's relatively hard to kill as long as you can hit that super senses roll. What's beneficial is you get the 20-point flash that you can add on, and at that point you can pick either of the other 2 starting points, which you'll 100% pick click 7, and that's the one with sidestep TK. His TK is what allows you to pull this team off. TK, when the Flash uses it to place a friendly character, after resolutions, you may place that character within 2 squares in line of fire of their current square. So it's very similar to Mr. Oz, if you ever played Mr. Oz, but it only works on people he TKs. That's only for 50 points, because you get the punchy one and then the 20 points for the TK one. So they are integral parts, because you need that extra 2 squares with the TK to get Wonder Woman into your opponent's starting area to in-cap. So those are the 2 flashes you're choosing. You're never choosing the middle one. There's never a reason to. You don't really need the enhancement. You don't really need the outwit. You don't really need to make sure lines of fire aren't hindered. You're never choosing that. You're choosing click 1 because you have to, and then you're choosing the TK click. The benefit to having the double charging flash is that he can also be he's your secondary attacker, but he can also be your barrier breaker, because he can charge and break a barrier and then charge and punch somebody. That's the benefit. He could even, depending on how the rules go, could technically charge and break 2 barriers, or charge and hit with an object and then break a barrier. He's really, really useful because he has such a long range, because he moves 7 range charge is pretty good. He also can be utilized to go pick up objects if you really want to. Your opponent's equipment, 13 range is pretty good. So if you're not wanting to be as aggressive, and we could talk about this more in some tactics, he's also useful for being TK'd out and then going to steal objects that you know are vitally important to your opponent. So don't dismiss just the 50 points of Flash. He is vitally important to the team. And he should be pretty much on every Justice League, Wonder Woman, the Lasso, Phobia teams. Let's talk about, let's see, that's 4. So let's talk about the 5th piece. So the Lasso Phobia team has a lot of moving parts. You have Wonder Woman who gets TK'd by Flash, and then she moves, so that's 2 actions, and then she does her lasso thing, which is free. Then Gigantic comes over and punches. But, you know, being TK'd and moving doesn't necessarily get you the whole way there. If your opponent's aggressive, you should be fine and that's it. But sometimes they just want to sit in their starting area. Or maybe you won map and they still sit in their starting area for whatever reason. That's why the 5th piece is arguably the most important piece next to the Wonder Woman and the Flash. As I said they're all important, right? Well, this one's important too. This is why it's the core piece. And that's starter Martian Manhunter for 40 points. Martian Manhunter brings to you a leadership, which is good. You already have one with the Flash, but that Flash could die pretty easily. But what he also brings is his founding member's trait. Speed +2, but only if your force has 4 or more characters with the Justice League keyword. That won't matter. For all friendly characters that can use this trait, action total +1, but only if your force has 6 or more characters with the Justice League keyword. So we already have 5, because Gigantic does gain the keywords of Wonder Woman. So you need 1 more. We'll talk about options for the other ones. You're going to want to stick with the Justice League theme team for this, so we have options. But that +1 action total puts you at 5 actions for your turn, which is good because you're going to need those actions to counter any potential setups your opponents might be doing. His damage skill is also, or his damage ability, is what allows Wonder Woman to fully make it to the other side of the board if your opponent decides to stonewall. And that's leadership, shape change, power action. Choose another friendly character with 0 or 1 action tokens that shares a keyword, and then move them up to half their speed value. So, the order of operations, which we'll talk about more, or I'll show you more in the opening salvo section, is basically you have Wonder Woman TK'd up by Flash, so that moves you up 8 squares. Then Martian Manhunter activates his ability as a power action. That's 2 actions. She now moves up 5 squares, maybe 6 depending on perplexes. And then you just give her a move action. And that's action 3. She's definitely in the starting area. And depending on how you set up, you can get over to their starting area maybe without that move. You could maybe just charge, but we'll talk about that. And then at that point, you Lasso, 4th action, Giganta. And then at that point, you might bring Flash over for your 5th action. I don't know why I was doing it this way. 5th action. But it gives you options. And Martian Manhunter is really required to get Wonder Woman over to their starting area. This is very much an Alpha Strike team, which I assume you knew if you signed up for this team, that this is an Alpha Strike team, which is what a majority of the meta is. So that's your core. Those are your 5 figures you generally want. I won't say generally. You're going to have on every version of this team. Remember, Gigantic could go between 75 and 25, so if you want an extra 50 points to get another attacker, go for it. I personally put her at 75, but 25 is fine. Gives you a little bit of extra room if you want to play with some Fates, Dr. Fates, or some other Justice League pieces like the Atom. You can't play Micron, but maybe Atom if you want to do that instead. So let's talk about how to build out the other 60 points or 110 points. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about the other pieces. Your support pieces, your secondary attackers, other things that fit with the 240 or the 190 point core team. Now, typically when I build this team, I don't add any equipment outside of the ones I bring in with Wonder Woman. There's generally not enough time to equip Time Gem, Reality Gem, any of the rings. Doesn't mean you can't, because you do have a TK and you do have some movers and sidesteppers. I just typically don't. But that's something you should keep in mind when you're figuring out what figures you want to bring in. My current version of the team has Stargirl and the Stargirl at 30 points, and the Wonder Twins at 25 points, filling out my 60 points. That gives me 5 more points, which I put towards the Injustice location bonus. If you don't know what the Injustice League location bonus is, it goes for the map, the Injustice Gang Hideout. It's a great map for this team. The team's still very mobile on it. There's some concern with barrier around it, but the benefit to that location bonus is this. I know how the Bat thinks for 5 points. At the beginning of the game, choose an opposing character of 100 points or less. Action tokens can't be removed from that character except by clearing. If your force is an Injustice League theme team, instead, action tokens can't be removed from opposing characters of 100 points or less except by clearing. So, the main thing you want with that in the Constellation, once per game, when an opposing character of 100 points or less would remove an action token except by clearing, instead you may give that character an action token. The benefit to that is because you're going to be in-capping their team, just period. So this allows figures that have willpower, that have power cosmic, that are under 100 points or 100 points or less, they won't get those rollouts. So a Molecule Man won't be able to get his cosmic power rollout because this inhibits it. Now, your big boys, your dark sides, your omegas, the ones with cosmic energy, they're over 100 points, so too bad. They're still gonna be able to remove action tokens. But this is a really, really useful location bonus for this team since you tie people up. And the map's pretty good too. Your team's pretty protected. It's indoor, and you can see a picture of it here. Very useful, and we'll talk about it more in our opening salvo. But that, to me, is your instant 5 points. I would almost put it as part of the core team, but if there's 60 points of something you really want to play, or I guess 110 points of something you really want to play, then this could be cut. It is kind of a little bit of the sprinkle on top, if you will, for this team. But to talk about figures that are played on the rest of the team, as I said, right now I'm currently playing Stargirl at 30, the Wonder Twins at 25. Stargirl gives me a perplex, gives me someone who could go out and get an object from somebody if I want. She also gives me Justice League Unlimited, which is a rollout on a 6 for anybody on my team, basically, because everyone is 100 points or less. And she has a stop click, so she's fairly hard to kill. She's definitely not bad at 30 points. She's primarily used for the perplex at the beginning, to perplex up Wonder Woman's movement by 1, to allow her to get just a little bit further with the Martian Manhunter move. The Wonder Twins are there for barrier support. At 25 points, they get barrier. They could also pick a dark blue or purple standard power, so you could choose Plasticity, and they could be your tie-up piece, because they're very frustrating to try to kill at 25 points. So typically, I move everyone out with Wonder Woman. I do the opening moves, have Wonder Woman TK'd out, and before I have her move with Martian Manhunter, I use my 5th action to move Wonder Twins out there to go next to her, and she carries the Wonder Twins up. And then the Wonder Twins ultimately base whoever you don't want to run away, and gives Plasticity and basically is super annoying. That's currently what I do. There's definitely way different options, and none of them are necessarily bad. You could go the Billy Batson route for 20 points. He comes with the Perplex and that free action to where at the beginning of your turn you may choose an opposing character within 4 squares in line of fire. Until your next turn, that character can't be given free actions, which is great against that inhibits charging, running shot, perplexing, outwitting, anything that's free actions. It stops all of that. The problem is I don't typically put Billy up there. I know you could carry him up there, potentially with another figure that we're going to talk about, but I don't typically, I'm just not a Billy fan. He's great, I just don't ever play him. So take that with a grain of salt about what I say about Billy. He's still a great piece, but he could offer you a perplex that you need, maybe 2, because he's only 20 points. If you're going, if it's, well, we gotta wait and see if it's modern, but at the time of this video it's still not, but that might change, is the Justice League Fulcrum Abominus, which is the giant colossal, 25 points Justice League. It's another retail probability control. It's got precision strike. When Justice League Fulcrum Abominus KOs the highest point opposing character. After resolutions, give all opposing characters an action token. So that just adds to this theme of more and more action tokens. And the retail's amazing. Like, this is a great retail piece. So for 25 points, if it becomes modern, I'm probably replacing the Wonder Twins with this piece. Just because having another retail for that turn 2 or turn 3, if they are able to still attack Giganta or Wonder Woman after the first attack, he's going to come in, or it's going to come in to, lay the smack down and offer another prop. Some other variations that I've seen, you could play Chase Green Arrow, the Trouble Alert, but play it main board at 25 points. Because we're not really utilizing equipment, and even if we do, we get it back, you could play Green Arrow to have Dr. Gulliver come out, and then Dr. Gulliver can sometimes cause equipment to be KO'd and stuff like that. It's a little riskier, but it's not ultimately risky with Wonder Woman teams because they'll just keep getting the objects back because they come from outside the game. So that's interesting. He's kind of a secondary attack piece because he has RCE, so he's 11 for 3 sidestep, 7 range for 25 points. That's pretty great. Yeah, I mean, I haven't yet tested him, but I have seen people play him, so definitely give him a look. If you're not super thrilled with Stargirl's Perplex or Billy Batson's Perplex, another cheap Justice League Perplex that you could choose is Stripe. Stripe is 35 points. He has defend and vulnerability, so he can protect some of your backline people with an 18 defend. He has leadership and perplex. If he hits that leadership, though, he can use perplex to target another friendly character, and when he does, he can modify combat value except damage +2. So that potentially gives Wonder Woman up to a 12 movement, or if you want to take her to a 13 attack if you're really worried about attack. The problem is that he's 35 points as opposed to Stargirl's 30, so you'd probably have to give up the location bonus or something along those lines. Now, if you're going the lower point Giganta route, oh, and I'd be remiss, this was also for the 240 point. You could go Atom, the Atom, very popular. This is probably my next test, is to see how the Atom works in this instance. But for 40 points, you can bring Atom along with Wonder Woman. You would have to get him out there first because obviously she's being TK'd, so he won't follow. But you could get him to go along, and so that way when she's moving up through different means, he wouldn't follow with a Martian Manhunter move because Wonder Woman is not being given the move or power action. It's a little tricky. She could carry him, like just normal carry him. He won't be able to do anything after. But there's options there. You could do it where he follows Flash around and he provides a perplex and outwit and maybe a second attack. He also has the Justice League Unlimited trait like Stargirl. So he is an option because this is an Alpha Strike team. And the Atom is, next to Micron, the epitome of Alpha Strike. So he's definitely one I'm going to try to fit on my team to see how he does. Because I think he has potential, but 40 points is a little rough for my current build. I think if I was going the 190 point route, the 25 point Giganta, I would consider him. I might consider Dr. Fate. You can only play Dr. Fates at the lower point Giganta line, but Dr. Fates and the rest of the Fates, good pieces, a lot of TK, enhancement, which helps with the other TK, some Mystics, some Justice League Unlimited. Everyone knows what the Fates do, but they also give you more action total. So I think technically you could get up to like a crazy, a +7? Like you get up to a 7 action total, which is nutty. But I don't think it's really realistic meta-wise. That's just way too many moving parts for what you're trying to do. There are a handful of other pieces that could be good, so don't take everything that I said as, the word, and that's all you can play. There are other pieces that could work, for sure. Just know that you're kind of limited by the Prime, so no Batman Prime out there. And a lot of the Justice League pieces are a little pricey. You could go a taxi route if you don't want to have Wonder Woman moving all the way out there with either the Superhero Green Lantern or Jessica Cruz. That's another option. That's one I haven't personally tested, and I don't think it really fits what this team is trying to do. You're trying not to have everyone over, but there are variations of this team where they use the Green Lantern team ability to bring the Atoms, the Wonder Woman, everybody over. So that's a quick look at the support pieces. Let's go ahead and just bust into our opening salvo. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about our opening salvo, our first move, if you will. So in this instance, the first example that I'm giving is We've Won map. This is the Injustice Gang hideout. This is the one that you built the location bonus for. Typically, you'll want to be on this side. The maps aren't actually perpendicular. You'll probably want to be on the map where you have the 3 doors on the one side. Whereas you can see this one has a door on the top, on the bottom, and then in the middle. You want these open to be able to go over to. So typically I choose this side over here. I know if you win map you don't get to choose sides, but you're hoping that's the case. But I'll show you what to do in either instance. This is the ideal setup though, at least for me personally. Once again, whether you have your figures moved over 1 square, 2 squares, whatever, it ultimately doesn't matter. I'm just giving you an example of how I would play the team and how I would do the opening move. I learned best on how a team works by seeing what people who built it or people who know the team really well, what they do for their first turn. So we began the game with 001 Wonder Woman. We are starting her with the Lasso of Truth. This is being done online, so maybe a little easier to do in person, but she is starting with the Lasso of Truth. The first thing I do when I start the game is go ahead and, make sure I roll my leaderships and all of that, because I usually forget. So don't forget your leaderships. Don't forget Stargirl's Justice League Unlimited ability. Just go ahead and roll those. After that, I have Stargirl Perplex up, Wonder Woman's movement. Now this is first turn, so you really don't want to go all in at this point. You could either pass turn, so that way they can't do anything to you, which is ideal. You don't really want to move out. The only option I would say you might have to move out, and in this instance, I'm already noticing something I would do different, is I would have Martian Manhunter there just to give a leadership for Flash. The Dark Flash, for example, is going to be the TK one. The lighter one is my charging Flash. So first turn, if I was going against an opponent, I would typically pass turn. I would perplex up, but pass, knowing that they can't attack me. They could barrier up, but I have options for that. One other option, if you're going against someone that has maybe a light object you really don't want to go against, that could be maybe Carnage Symbiote, maybe Venom Symbiote, maybe Exospecs, which isn't really that big of a deal. Maybe some of the rings, but really it's going to be just the symbiotes. You could do a opening move where you have this Flash TK the other Flash. So let's say only to there because of the positioning. This is as far as you could go with those flashes. This Flash comes out here. He can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Pick up the object and then come back 13. That's an option. After you place him, actually I completely forgot. After you place him, you get to move him 2 within line of fire, but this is as far as you can go. And so he would be able to get back to here, column 13, which is useful with the object. You could consider, let's see, if you get him there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you could consider, excuse me, hear me out. You could consider having Martian Manhunter go ahead and use an action to give him a movement action to move him up here. So that puts us at what? 1 action, 2 actions. And then he could charge up He can move 7, or if you perplexed him up, he could move 8. Move 8 because he's got a 13 movement. He could charge up and charge back. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to here. And then he could just do a charge, destroy object action. He could throw the object or whatever. So he could basically destroy the object and basically almost get back home and destroy the object. So that's an option. That's a little riskier because you're tokening up your other people. I mean, there's no pushing damage, but it might mean your third turn is a little bit slower, which is okay. But I haven't yet done this, but it is an option. It just depends on what you're going against. If you're going against a tentpole team that really relies on a light object, then that might be better. But otherwise, I just perplex up and wait. I might move Wonder Twins up because if they want to take a chance and shoot at Wonder Twins, okay. Because they're 25 points and they're kind of hard to kill. They got to take 7 damage, I believe. So that's something they could do. Otherwise, turn 2, when it's my turn and now all the first turn immunity is gone, the opening move is this. Typically, you perplex up Wonder Woman's movement. You then give Flash in action to TK. I've got it lined up just so that she could see this square, Flash could see this square, so she could be TK to here. Then, because of Flash's ability, she gets to be moved 2 because it's within line of fire, so you just go to here. And we'll do this as an example. We'll say they're down here. Otherwise, you could position differently, and you could go to up there. Like you could flip these people around. This is the opening move, but you can adjust your pieces accordingly. So this is just 1 TK. At that point, you would free power action, have her move up to her speed. She has flight, and she has a 10 movement, but +1 because of perplex, so she would move 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to here. And at this point, she still hasn't taken any actions herself. So she could just normal charge for 6 into here. So we could say, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. She could hit anyone down here. So she punches. Then you could Lasso of Truth, see who you hit. After you Lasso of Truth, I typically, in this instance, depending on how successful the first Lasso of Truth is, if it was successful, I then shifting focus, common Wonder Woman out for rare Wonder Woman because of that damage power I talked about before. That gives everyone a -1 to their defense, but I then equip her with the Lasso of Truth because she just began the game. So now she's the one with the Lasso of Truth. She lassos of Truth again with a 12 attack, and hopefully everyone's got a -1 to their defense because they're within her range and they have action tokens. And if I hit again, sweet, almost everyone should be double tokened. At that point, I'm up to 3 actions. I will give an action over to Giganta to then come over and retile and Giganta smash. And she does 4 damage to everyone that, hopefully, best case scenario, has a -2 to all their defenses. I also give, very important, Wonder Woman a free action to switch out the equipment to the bracers or the golden armor. If it's at this point, it would be golden armor, so she only takes a maximum 1. Once she's off her top click, I immediately go to Wonder Woman bracers to give her another rollout. And that's only 4 actions. Now, I've mentioned before, sometimes before I do the Martian Manhunter move, so she goes to here and she is there after the TK, I'll take 1 action to move them forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's an action. I have the free action choose Plasticity. And then when she does her move with Martian Manhunter and she's all the way over here, what do you know? They're there too. And if you could get them in place, the Plasticity, they have sidestep so they can move around a bit. They're not going to attack, they're just there to be annoying. That's literally all they're doing, is to be annoying. And this is what I consider 5 actions. Your ideal first turn, being able to hit everyone. They're hopefully all bunched up. If not, then you could kind of move your in-caps around, maybe in-cap one group, and then when you're shifting focus, in-cap another group. That's ideally your best scenario. Now, if that doesn't work, let's talk about what happens if they barrier up. I think that's a good one. If they barrier up, and let's say they place their barriers out here, they're really protective. Maybe you're going to get some Molecule Man or something, and they're really protective. First off, you gotta hope a little bit that they're not too great with their barriers. I know that's not a great thing to say when you're talking about a meta team, but let's say they do something like so. Let's do that. Let's say this is their team. Let's just do this. I didn't pick a team to go out against because there's a lot of meta teams. At this point, what you could do, and what I would do, this is your first turn setup. So it is now second turn. First turn before they do the barrier, I would actually go ahead and move Flash up. I would go ahead and do the TK we were talking about. TK him to here, then have him do the +2 move, or I would do basically everything we said with the object. It's just instead of stealing the object, and he could still steal the object, he's going to come up here. So basically he does the free move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 because of the Martian Manhunter. And then he is going to charge 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to here. And ideally, if the object's here, that's great. If it's down here, you would obviously 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You would basically get in a better position, and you should be able to charge in here to destroy a barrier. Now they could double up, and so that's where you might have to change things up a little bit. This might not be a great strategy. But this is something you could do first turn, is to get him out there. All we care about at this point is getting him in a position to get up there to charge, because he could charge and then charge again. So you can have Flash out here first turn. That would either make them get out of their barrier to go shoot Flash, and then you can go take him out the second turn. Or if they decide, okay, that's still a little too risky, let's barrier up and figure out what we're going to do, then Flash at the next point could just charge up and then charge up, bust a barrier. That's just your one action. That's your Wonder Twins action. And then everything else in this wheelhouse will work as intended. So don't be afraid to use Flash. He's only 30 points. Use him as a barrier buster, a second attacker, anything along those lines is what I would do in that instance. So that's my typical opening salvo. Once again, there are a lot of different variations. It's really dependent on matchup. But the whole point of us doing this is showing what an ideal opening move is for this team to work. Not all teams have a great opening salvo, but the Lasso Phobia team absolutely has a great opening salvo. So let's talk a little bit about pros and cons. Great things about this team and things that don't work with this team. So one of the things I love most about the Lasso Phobia team is that it has a lot of benefits. It's a team that doesn't have a lot of risk involved. And there's not a lot of teams that are that hard countering. You know, there's a lot of hard counters in the meta. And there's really not a lot for this team. The team could ultimately fail just by rolls, so we're throwing that out. Any team could just lose if they have terrible rolls on the day. But let's talk about some pros. So one thing I like about this team is that I feel like it's a very hard counter against tent poles. If you're able to consistently lock them up with in cap, you're gonna be golden. Now, if they got Battle Fury, or if they just keep hitting that cosmic energy rollouts or willpower rollouts, then it won't be as effective, but even still, you're going to be able to keep getting hits off, and you've got a lot of different attackers between Wonder Woman, Giganta, Flash. You could bring over the other Flash, you could bring in the Martian Manhunter, you could Stargirl, like, you have a lot of potential there. So, tentpoles are going to have a hard time. Swarm teams, POG teams like Maggot teams or other alpha strikey teams are also going to struggle a bit against this because they're going to be consistently grouped up. Alpha strike swarm teams typically don't split up. They only have one taxi and they bring everybody up. So they might try to be a little bit more aggressive against you, but you can then counter them by lassoing them up and keeping them incapped. Now, I know Maggot can still free action, pop out Eenie or Meanie, but they're not going to do enough damage to take out Giganta unless they get really, really, really lucky. And at that point, Giganta should have already smashed and taken out a decent amount of their team. I will say one of the negatives against the team is the fact that Giganta can be outwitted. And Giganta's the majority of the damage on your team. Wonder Woman's going to keep dinging things. Flash is going to keep dinging things. But this team doesn't have penetrating damage. Generally, penetrating damage. You can outwit some stuff, but unless you fit that 60 points with a penetrating damage figure, you're not going to have it through Wonder Woman, Giganta, and Flash. So that's something to keep in mind. You might give a Spectral Ring to Flash or something to give Precision Strike. That might be an option. But that's, I guess, one of the negatives to the team is that there's not really a penetrating damage figure on the team. So this team does struggle a little bit against pieces that have strong defensive powers like Impervious and Invincible. Impervious is probably the worst one because they could just roll out the damage. And against teams that have a lot of rollouts, so if they have both Super Senses and Shape Change and Impervious and they're just hitting everything, once again, that's a rolls thing, but that's something where you have the percentage of winning goes down a little bit. It's not a hard counter by any means. You could still get lucky. You have the dice. You have the numbers, I should say, to be able to hit things well. You have 12 attack on Wonder Woman. Giganta's an 11. You got Perplexes. You should be fine. It's just, a lot of rollouts could be trouble. The team also does a little bit of a worse time when teams spread out. Because you can in-cap certain things. You're hoping everyone groups up at the beginning. But if they're smart and they spread everything out, you have to play a different game. Maybe you're not as aggressive with the Alpha Strike. Maybe you go for their core team and then hope that Dark Phoenix doesn't retail or whatever. That's just kind of a counter. So if you're looking to counter this team, you would need to really be able to play more aggressive than them, but also spread out your team more. That's one thing I've noticed with this team. Either way, though, this team, I think, is definitely one of the top Alpha Strike teams and one of the top teams in the meta, for sure. It doesn't have a lot of hard counters. A good player should be able to mitigate any of those issues that I mentioned a few minutes ago. And that's kind of the point of this, is making everybody a good player. So, definitely, it's a team you want to practice. It's a team you want to put on the map. It's a team you want to get out there, try that opening salvo. A team you want to try to play against tentpole swarm teams, the gauntlet that I talk about all the time. As far as future-proofing this team, well, future-proofing, it's one of those words people like to say. Because it's a DC team, it's Justice League. You're not going to have new pieces until the next DC team. So the only changes you'll see maybe in future episodes is how to counter maybe new teams that rise in the meta, maybe a new X-Men team, a new Avengers team. But otherwise, keep in mind, one main thing to keep in mind is that this team really relies on Wonder Woman attacking with the free Lasso and Giganta retailing. Keep in mind that even if they have Battle Fury, you still can make the attack. You just can't give action tokens. That's the key thing, because Battle Fury changed to not protected in cap, just protected tokens from opposing effects. So you can still lasso them. No tokens will go out, but Wonder Woman will still attack, which is very important for Giganta. So I think that's going to do it for this episode of Mastering the Meta. This is the Lasso Phobia team. That's pretty much all there is to it. Feel free to send me a message if you want to talk about this team more. If you have anything you want me to add to the update video that we'll do down the line, let me know. If you like this, if there's something else you want to do, because this is our first episode of Mastering the Meta, then let me know. Let me know if you like the format. Let me know if you want me to change some things up. If you want me to keep my glasses on, because I took them off for a while and then put them back on. But yeah, that's it. That's it for this episode of Mastering the Meta. Until next time, guys. I'll see you guys later.